it's allowing individuals within an otherwise impoverished community an opportunity to attain social mobility, right? An opportunity to enter the global market, economic market, right? Through finally embracing the middle class. So very, very, very complex, very complex arrangements. Okay, so with respect to this conception here, right, the key step is Polanyi's avalanche of sort of social dislocation, right? We need to, now if you're thinking as the boogeyman, right, if you want to become the boogeyman, and I very rarely ever talk like this publicly, but I write like this a lot. My writing is very sort of dark, but publicly you gotta, you put on the game face. But if you want to think for the next generation of human rights scholars, and this is so cool that I get to educate you guys, I love this, right? But the next generation of human rights scholars, right? If you want to think like the boogeyman, to prevent and to protect those who could potentially be exploited, you need to think to yourself, how do I increase social dislocation? I'm not going to answer that. I have a couple ideas, but I'm just putting it out there. Why would you want to increase social dislocation, right? Why would you want people to be more apathetic within the context of global capitalism? Well, obviously all of this has to generate more wealth. How does Marilyn Manson said it best? Just Google Marilyn, I don't know, the video has to be on YouTube. I think it was an interview with, I think he was with Michael Moore. Put like Michael Moore, Marilyn Manson, and as a matter of fact, after I finish this lecture series, I'm going to see if it's on and watch it myself. Just Google that, right? Fear. Is it good for business? Is it bad for business? What do you think it does? Dislocation, violence. Is it good for business? Is it bad for business? What do you think it does? Granted, this is a lot of conspiracy theory stuff. This is a lot of boogeyman talk. But if you want to, and I'm only now, I'm not talking just to the sort of, I'm not talking to the general student who's just doing this to write a term paper. I'm not talking to the person who's watching my video just because they're interested in just to learn some new stuff. I'm talking to you, the person who is and has decided to spend the rest of your life fighting for individuals who could be targeted for, in my case, extermination, in your case, human rights exploitation or abuse. I'm talking only to you. You need to think like the boogeyman, right? Why would social dislocation be a very viable, a very profitable, incentivized motive to introduce into the social nexus for those who want to amass wealth at the expense of others? Why is it? Right? That's what needs to govern your research, because if your research isn't informed by that, then you're not doing good research. Right? Not knocking the utopists, but I'm not that type of dude, right? I'm trying to figure out really how to protect people, and recognizing that there are people and there are institutions that are in place that will exploit people without conscience, period. And if you don't think like them, then you're not doing your job at protecting those who could be exploited, because nobody would do that, and then they do it, right? So this idea of social dislocation, I can't emphasize how important it is for a human rights theorist to recognize we need to make sure that we attack, theoretically, social dislocation, the willful and intentful attempt to dislocate individuals within society as our first line of defense. Let's defend against that, right? Human rights theorists, let's defend against that. Why? Because we recognize insofar as we defend against that, granted there's going to be economic and socio-political turmoil, right, because of the global recession of 2008 and blah, 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 blah. But if we're still connected, if I am empathetic and not apathetic to the plight of others, what might that do? How might we survive, right? If I'm apathetic to the plight of others, my apathy is going to be used to incentivize further exploitation, right? This is obviously geniusly represented in Quentin Tarantino's *Inglourious Basterds*, where the SS captain comes and he has this great, amazing milk conversation. And this guy was a rarity. He was protecting others. He was empathetic. His neighbors were apathetic. Look what happened when the surrounding community in France was apathetic to the plight of others. I don't have anything else to say. So you have to think. You are obligated to think like the boogeyman. Last point in this section, and then we're finished. Integration of the rest of the world, Asia, Africa, and Central and Latin America into the global economy has been occurring since the end of World War II and has dramatically speeded up by globalization, right? So the process of globalization has rapidly expanded. Me personally, and I'll just put a little bit of my personal sort of bit on this, me personally, I don't view globalization as an economic structure as the boogeyman. I think like anything else, it can be exploited, and I think people will try to exploit it, and they will exploit it for a while. But human rights violations will mount, and NGOs and good conscious people will bring attention to those exploitation, and the government will do what it has to do, because the government is charged with the protection of the population. The government may or may not necessarily directly care about the population, but the government definitely does care about its own power. And as we saw before, human rights violations that exceed sort of the pale of acceptability results in a justification of the population to revolt against the government, because you're failing to protect us. And since you're allowing everybody to come in and exploit us, we don't want you to be our government. So it's a balance that needs to be met. So for me, I think that the system has an inherency to be exploitative. I don't think it's this diabolical inherency. I think it's just a matter of individuals or individual groups or individual corporations attempting to game the system. But I really do believe that the reappropriation of wealth, I guess you could say from to, I don't particularly like thinking of it in those terms, but from the developed world to the developing world, it's a good thing for the people in the third world. It's a good thing for the people in developing nations. It's a good thing to see a global growth in the middle class, even though we might, within the United States, look at the decrease of our own middle class. As I said before, this is where political leaders and our scientists and people like myself need to get together and think of new ways to be employed, right? So that's it. So with that, I want to thank you for taking your time to watch my videos. I will continue the next section, I think it's 4.1, in the analysis. I'm Dr. Jason J. Campbell. Have a good day.